My name is Angela, and I grew up in a small house just outside of Detroit. Life wasn't easy, but we made it work. I was the oldest child, and when my baby sister Lily was born, everything in my world changed. I was only 9 years old at the time, but I remember it like it happened yesterday. The day she came home from the hospital, I stood beside the crib and whispered, "Don't worry, I'll take care of you." And I meant it. Our parents were good people, but they were always working. My mom cleaned offices at night and my dad worked long hours in a factory. By the time they got home, they were too tired to even sit down and play with us. So without anyone asking me, I stepped up. I became more than just a big sister. I became her second mother. I changed Lily's diapers before I even learned how to braid my own hair. I fed her bottles while doing my homework. I held her when she cried in the middle of the night. Sometimes I had to miss my own school projects because she got sick and no one else could stay home with her. Teachers used to ask me why I looked tired all the time, but how could I explain that I was waking up 3 times a night for a baby that wasn't mine? There were times I missed birthday parties because someone had to stay with her. I'd look out the window and see other girls jumping rope or riding bikes, while I was inside holding a teething baby. I never complained out loud, but deep inside I was just a kid who gave up her own childhood without even realizing it. But you know what? I loved her. I loved her so much it hurt. Every time she reached out for me instead of our mom, a strange mix of sadness and pride would fill my chest. I didn't have dolls or tea sets. I had Lily. I taught her to say her first words, helped her take her first steps, and clapped louder than anyone else when she finally went potty on her own. I was there for every little moment, and those moments became my memories too. By the time she started preschool, people in the neighborhood had started calling her Angela's baby. I'd laugh, but it wasn't a joke to me. I used to tell people, "She's not my sister, she's my first child." And I meant it. Every bottle I prepared, every story I read, every scraped knee I kissed, it was all out of love. It never felt like a burden back then. It felt like purpose. I thought I was building something strong between us, something unbreakable. I never imagined there'd be a day when she'd forget all of that. I never thought she'd turn her back on me when I needed just one small favor. But that day did come. And it started with a phone call that broke something inside me, something I had spent years quietly protecting. That phone call still plays in my head sometimes, but life doesn't wait for you to feel better. Time moved on, and so did I. Now I'm 31 and I'm a single mother to my little girl Emma. She just turned 4 and she's the light of my life. She has my eyes and her daddy's smile, even though he doesn't smile at us anymore. He left when Emma was just 6 months old. No big fight, no final argument, just a short note on the kitchen table saying he wasn't ready to be a father. I remember reading that note while holding our baby in one arm and a bottle in the other. I didn't have time to cry. I had a diaper to change, a bottle to warm up, and bills piling up on the counter. I started working 2 part-time jobs to keep food on the table. In the mornings, I cleaned rooms at a motel across town. At night, I worked the register at a grocery store. There were days I came home so tired I couldn't feel my legs. But Emma was always there waiting, arms open wide, smiling like I'd just come back from a holiday. Most nights, I'd rock her to sleep with one hand and try to fold laundry with the other. It was hard, but I got used to it. I got used to the pain in my back, the dark circles under my eyes, and the feeling of being completely alone. What I never got used to was pretending I was okay when I wasn't. Despite everything, I never asked for much from anyone. I've always been that way, quietly surviving. Even with Lily, I never expected her to pay me back for all those years I raised her. I didn't need that. All I wanted was a little closeness, a little sisterhood. I thought we had that. But the truth is, I've been carrying so much weight for so long that I stopped noticing how heavy it had become. Every day felt like a test I didn't sign up for. Some nights, after Emma finally fell asleep, I'd sit in the dark and whisper to myself, "Just one more day. You got this. Just one more day." There were moments I came close to breaking. Once, I had just $20 left and rent due the next morning. I sat at the edge of the bed and stared at that bill, wondering which one of us could survive on less food that week. I couldn't bring myself to call anyone. Not even Lily. Not even when I really needed help. It wasn't pride, not completely. It was fear. Fear of rejection, fear of hearing someone say they couldn't be there for me. I'd rather go without than hear someone I love make me feel like a burden. I'd rather struggle quietly than risk feeling small in front of the people who should care. Still, that pride, it's been slowly cracking under pressure. Every month gets harder. Every bill hits heavier. And I'm tired. Not just physically but emotionally. Tired of pretending I don't need help. Tired of acting strong when I just want to sit down and let someone else carry the weight, even if just for an hour. That's why, when that job interview came out of nowhere, it felt like a tiny bit of light in all the darkness. I thought maybe, just maybe, this could be the thing that helps us breathe again. And so, I picked up my phone, took a deep breath, and called the only person I thought I could lean on, my sister. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, staring at the number on the screen. My hands were shaking a little. It had been a while since I'd asked anyone for anything, especially Lily. But this interview wasn't just some part-time side gig. It was a real opportunity. A full-time position with health benefits, regular hours, and enough pay that I could maybe start breathing again. It felt like the kind of job that could change everything for Emma and me. Just 1 hour. That's all I needed. I had lined up a babysitter 2 days earlier, someone my neighbor recommended, and everything was set. But less than an hour before I had to leave, she texted me that she couldn't make it. Emergency. I didn't blame her. Life happens. But suddenly I had a window closing fast and no one to watch Emma. I looked at her sitting on the carpet, coloring with broken crayons and softly humming to herself. She had no idea how important this hour was. I bit my lip and scrolled through my contacts. Friends. Oh. Everyone worked during the day. Coworkers. I didn't even have coworkers, just managers and shift leads who barely remembered my name. I stared at my sister's name on the screen. It took me a full minute to press call. She picked up after a few rings. Hey, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Listen, I know this is super last minute, but I just got called for a job interview. Full-time, good pay, benefits. It's kind of a big deal. I really need someone to watch Emma for just an hour. Just one. I'll drop her off and pick her up right after. Could you? Before I could even finish, she cut me off. I'm not a daycare, you know. I froze. My mouth stayed open, the words still sitting on my tongue. I laughed nervously, thinking maybe she was joking. Maybe this was her weird way of saying yes, but with a little sarcasm. Wait, I'm serious. Just 1 hour, I said. It's really important. But I didn't get to finish. She hung up. Just like that. No explanation. No curiosity. No, how are you holding up? Not even a pause to let me explain why this mattered so much. I sat there in silence for a moment, staring at the screen, my heart beating so fast it hurt. Emma looked up at me with her big, innocent eyes and asked, "Are we going somewhere, Mommy?" I looked at the clock. I looked at her. And then I realized, it was over. I wasn't going anywhere. I missed the interview. And in that quiet moment I felt something inside me go still. It wasn't just disappointment. It was a kind of sadness that ran deep. Deeper than I expected. Because I wasn't just losing a chance at a job. I was losing my sister. All over again. I didn't even realize the tears had started until I felt one roll down my cheek and drop onto my shirt. I sank to the floor, knees pulled to my chest, right there on the living room rug. Emma crawled into my lap and looked up at me with those big eyes full of questions. "Mommy, are you sad?" she asked, reaching out with her tiny fingers to wipe my tears. I smiled the best I could and shook my head, but the truth was I didn't even know how to explain the kind of sadness I felt. It wasn't just about the missed interview anymore. It was about everything leading up to that moment. It was about a lifetime of sacrifices, of love freely given without ever keeping score. Until now. And suddenly my mind started pulling me back. I remembered sitting at the kitchen table when I was 12, trying to finish my science homework, while Lily sat across from me crying because she didn't understand her multiplication tables. Our parents were working the night shift again, so I pushed my homework aside and helped her for hours until she finally got it. I didn't sleep that night. I got a D on my science test the next day. But Lily passed her math quiz, and she smiled for the first time in days. Then came the night of the winter dance. I'd saved up for weeks to buy a second-hand dress from a thrift store and even borrowed shoes from a neighbor. I was so excited. But right as I was curling my hair, Lily came running into the room crying, holding her stomach. I took one look at her and knew something was wrong. I didn't even hesitate. I slipped off those borrowed shoes, threw on my hoodie and called a cab. We spent the night in the appendicitis. I held her hand the whole time. And how could I forget her 10th birthday? She wanted this fairy tale party with decorations, music, a cake shaped like a unicorn. Our parents said we couldn't afford it. So I picked up a job cleaning dishes at a 24-hour diner on weekends. I was 16. I lied about my age to get the job. I worked until my fingers were raw and my eyes burned from lack of sleep. But on her birthday, that unicorn cake was sitting right on the table and she had the biggest smile I'd ever seen. All of it, for this moment? I kept thinking, was this really all I meant to her? Just someone to hang up on when I finally needed something? The more I remembered, the more the ache in my chest grew. I wasn't expecting her to owe me anything. But I did think there was love between us. A kind of unspoken bond, built on all those years when I stepped in as her second mother. I thought that meant something. But now it just felt like none of it mattered. Emma tugged at my shirt and said, "Don't cry, Mommy. I'll help you." And I wrapped my arms around her so tight because in that moment she was the only one in the world who truly saw me. After that day, something inside me changed. I didn't say anything to Lily. I didn't call, didn't text, didn't even send her a message to say how much her words had hurt me. I just let the silence speak. It was louder than anything I could have ever said. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. My phone stayed quiet. No messages from her. Not even a birthday text for Emma. And for the first time in my life, I didn't chase after her. I didn't try to fix things. I had spent too many years holding that relationship together with both hands while she barely lifted a finger. I focused on work. Emma started preschool and I picked up extra shifts whenever I could. Life didn't get easier, but it got a little quieter. A little clearer. Then one afternoon I bumped into an old friend of ours from school at the grocery store. We hadn't talked in years, but she recognized me right away and came over with a gentle smile. "Hey, I heard about Lily," she said softly. I blinked. "What about her?" She paused, looked around like she was deciding how much to say. Her fiancé walked out. Just packed up and left. No warning. And she lost her job last month. She's behind on rent. Things are kind of falling apart. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there holding a loaf of bread in one hand and a bag of apples in the other. My heart didn't jump. I didn't feel joy or revenge. It just felt still. Because I knew this was life. Not in a cruel way. Not as punishment. But as a lesson. Life has a way of circling back. Of holding up a mirror when we least expect it. I had spent my childhood learning hard lessons early. How to sacrifice, how to care for someone else, how to show up even when I was exhausted. And Lily? He was learning now. The same way I had. Through loss. Through silence. She didn't even see it yet. She probably thought the world was just being unfair to her. That people were letting her down. She didn't know this was life handing her the very same weight she once watched me carry. I didn't call her. I didn't reach out. I just went home, made dinner for Emma, and kissed her goodnight like I always did. Because now I was finally learning something too. Sometimes, silence is the answer they need to hear most. It was a rainy evening. One of those nights where the clouds hang low and the wind pushes the rain against the windows like it's trying to get inside. I was folding laundry on the couch while Emma colored beside me on the floor, humming quietly to herself. Then came the knock. Not loud. Not urgent. Just soft enough to catch my attention. I wasn't expecting anyone. It was too late for deliveries and my neighbors usually called before showing up. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked to the door, already wondering who it could be. When I opened it, I froze. There she was. Lily. Soaked from head to toe, her coat clinging to her body, strands of wet hair stuck to her face. She was holding a small duffel bag in one hand and an old grocery sack in the other. No umbrella. No jacket. Just standing there like a shadow from my past. Her eyes met mine. Tired, red, full of something I couldn't quite name at first, until I realized it was guilt. She opened her mouth, hesitated, then said in a quiet voice, "Can I stay here for a while? Just until I figure things out." I didn't say a word. I didn't ask why now. I didn't ask where she'd been or what had finally brought her here. I just stepped aside and let her walk in. She passed by slowly, dripping water onto the floor, her eyes scanning the room like she was walking through a memory. Emma looked up from her coloring and blinked in surprise. "Aunt Lily." Lily gave a small smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hey, sweetheart," she said softly. I closed the door behind her and stood there for a second, letting the silence settle. The sound of the rain tapping on the windows filled the space between us. I offered her a towel, which she took with shaking hands, and pointed her toward the bathroom. She didn't say much that night. And neither did I. She changed into dry clothes and sat quietly at the edge of the couch while I made tea. Emma fell asleep on my lap and I watched Lily as she stared into her mug, her shoulders curled in like someone carrying too much weight. But here's what I felt most. The energy between us had changed. There was no warmth. No laughter. No inside jokes from our childhood. Just silence. Not angry silence, but the kind that sits between two people when too much has gone unsaid for too long. She was here. But everything was different now. The next morning I made breakfast for Emma. Scrambled eggs, toast with butter and a small bowl of fruit. I tried to keep everything as normal as possible. Emma was always a picky eater, so I had to make sure her plate had the right balance of everything she liked. Lily sat at the table staring into her mug, still wearing that tired look. She hadn't changed much from the night before. She tried to smile at Emma, maybe hoping to rebuild something, but Emma didn't smile back. Instead, she hid behind my legs, peeking out at her aunt with wide eyes, her small hands clutching my shirt like she wasn't sure what to do with the situation. Lily tried again, her voice a little too bright, too forced. "Hey Emma, remember me? I used to take you to the park sometimes." Emma didn't respond. She just tightened her grip on my shirt and stared at Lily with a quiet sadness. I sat down beside them, taking a slow breath. There was so much I could say, but I couldn't bring myself to raise my voice. I didn't want to yell. What would be the point? Lily had already heard everything I needed to say in the silence between us. Instead, I looked at her and spoke softly. "You were never a daycare." I was. The words came out easier than I thought they would, like a quiet release of all the years I had held back my hurt. Lily froze. She looked at me with wide, startled eyes, like she hadn't expected me to say that. But I meant it. I always had. You were always the one who was there for me, she whispered, a tremor in her voice. I never saw it like that. The guilt in her eyes deepened, and for the first time I saw it clearly, her realization. Her hands shook as she set her mug down, her voice breaking as she choked out the words. I'm sorry. I never understood. I thought you were just being a big sister. But you were doing everything for me. Her tears fell quietly and she finally broke. The weight she had carried so long seemed to fall away in that moment. The sister who used to be so carefree, so wrapped up in her own world, finally saw the sacrifices I had made. And in that silence I knew she finally understood. I looked at her, watching the tears that had fallen now dry on her cheeks. There was something different in her eyes now, a recognition, a humility I hadn't seen before. "I forgive you," I said quietly, my voice steady. "But I won't forget." She nodded like she knew what I meant. Forgiveness didn't mean I could erase everything. What happened, the years of sacrifice, the silent hurt. But it meant I could finally let go of the anger. And that was enough. I had to set boundaries. I had to. No more one-sided giving. No more constantly putting others before myself. No more pretending that I was just the strong, unshakable one who could handle it all. "We're sisters," I continued, looking at her firmly. "But now we're adults too. That means we both have responsibilities in this relationship." She didn't argue. She didn't try to justify what had happened. She just nodded, the weight of her realization still hanging between us. Over the next few days she began to show up differently. She offered to help me with the chores around the house. She even offered to watch Emma when I needed time to catch up on my work. And this time there was no reluctance, no excuses. She did it genuinely. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about me trying to make her pay for what she'd done. It was about respect. She needed to see that the bond we shared wasn't one-sided anymore. I wasn't going to carry everything alone. We were learning how to be sisters again, but this time with the understanding that both of us had our roles, our needs, and our limits. And in that quiet way we began to heal. Looking back, I don't regret raising her like a daughter. In fact, part of me is proud of the woman she's become, despite the mistakes, the distance, and everything we've been through. Those years weren't wasted. I gave her my love, my time, my energy. I showed up when no one else did. And for a long time I thought that was enough. But now I've learned something important. Love doesn't mean endless sacrifice. It doesn't mean pouring yourself out, day after day, and expecting nothing in return. At some point you have to stop giving so much of yourself away. You have to realize that your worth isn't defined by how much you can do for others. It's about recognizing that you have value too. That your needs, your feelings, and your well-being matter just as much. Sometimes the people we give the most to give us the least. It's a hard truth, but it's one I've come to accept. I spent so many years believing that love was measured by what I could give, by how much I could sacrifice. But now I know better. Love is about mutual respect. It's about being seen, heard, and valued, not just by others but by yourself. So I choose peace. For me. For Emma. I choose to move forward, not holding on to the anger or resentment that once consumed me. I choose to heal and to let go. Because at the end of the day, I'm not a daycare either. I'm a mother, a sister, and a woman who finally knows her worth. And that's something no one can take from me.